Hern would move the retirement line. Jim Priest would move the income line. Social Security has a real financing problem. Hern would raise the full retirement age from 67 to 69. Priest starts with a fairness question. Why should a teacher or plumber pay Social Security tax on every dollar of wages, while $1 million wage earner stops paying after $184,500? Social Security has a financing problem, but there is more than one way to solve it. Social Security has a real math problem. Congress cannot ignore it. Democrats cannot wish it away. Republicans are right that eventually the numbers have to balance. But before Oklahoma voters accept Hern's argument that future workers should wait longer for full Social Security benefits, they should know one fact that changes the entire debate. On the combined retirement and disability basis commonly used to evaluate Social Security's long-term finances, the 2026 trustees project that reserves will be depleted in the third quarter of 2034 if Congress does nothing. Even then, continuing revenue would be enough to pay about 83% of scheduled benefits. The retirement fund by itself is projected to exhaust its reserves somewhat sooner, in late 2032. That is a serious problem, but it is not the disappearance of Social Security. In 2024, Hern told Fox News there were essentially three options for fixing Social Security: change the retirement age, change what the program pays, or increase the number of people working and paying into the system. But there is another major lever sitting in plain sight: change how much wage income is subject to Social Security taxes. The Social Security Administration's actuaries modeled eliminating the ceiling on wages subject to the payroll tax and applying the full 12.4% employee-employer tax to all covered earnings, without giving additional benefit credit for the earnings newly taxed. Under the latest published estimate for that option, reserves stay positive until 2059 instead of 2034. 25 years matters. It does not permanently solve Social Security. But 2059 is a very different problem from 2034. 25 additional years gives the country time for wage growth, greater labor force participation, demographic changes, and additional smaller reforms to improve the system. It gives Congress time to consider other revenue sources. And it gives lawmakers time to solve the remaining problem without beginning by telling future retirees that the finish line has moved farther away. That brings us to the clearest difference yet between Hern and Jim Priest. Hern has supported raising Social Security's full retirement age from 67 to 69 for future retirees. His argument is based partly on increased American longevity. People live longer than when Social Security was created, so they can reasonably be expected to work longer before receiving full benefits. Priest starts somewhere else. His campaign has called for removing the Social Security tax cap for wealthy earners and extending Social Security financing more broadly to high-income sources, including capital gains and dividends. Hern would move the retirement line. Priest would move the income line. In 2026, an employee pays 6.2% of wages into Social Security. The employer contributes another 6.2%. But Social Security taxes apply only to the first $184,500 of wages. After that, the Social Security portion of the payroll tax stops. So an Oklahoma teacher earning $60,000 pays Social Security tax on every dollar of wages. So does the plumber, the nurse, the mechanic, the police officer, and the employee earning $100,000. The maximum employee Social Security contribution in 2026 is $11,439. Someone earning $184,500 pays that amount. Someone earning $500,000 pays the same amount. Someone earning $1 million pays the same amount. At $60,000 of wages, the effective employee Social Security rate is 6.2%. At $500,000, it is about 2.29%. At $1 million, it is about 1.14%. At $2 million, it is about 0.57%. The high earner does not receive a special lower Social Security tax rate. The tax simply stops once wages reach $184,500. That is the fairness issue Priest is putting on the table. Why should the teacher pay Social Security tax on 100% of her wages, while someone earning $1 million pays it on only the first $184,500? Why should the plumber contribute under the same percentage all year while the effective Social Security rate on a $1 million wage falls to about 1.14%? And when Social Security needs additional money, why should Congress begin by moving the worker's retirement age before asking whether the income line should move? That is not an argument against success. It is an argument about who should be asked to contribute first when a system almost every working family depends on needs more money. This difference fits the career histories we examined in the first article in this series. Priest's campaign biography describes more than 4 decades working with employees, employers, and organizations through employment law, mediation, and nonprofit leadership. He later led Oklahoma City nonprofits providing workforce development and services to families and individuals in need. Hern came to Congress from a very different direction. His congressional biography emphasizes his success as an entrepreneur and employer, including building a McDonald's franchise organization and investments in other industries. There is nothing wrong with bringing the perspective of a successful business owner to Congress. Oklahoma needs people who understand employers, investment, risk, and what it takes to build a business. But after years in Washington, Hern's policy choices increasingly seem to begin on the other side of the table from the worker living primarily on a paycheck. Social Security makes that difference unusually clear. Priest looks at a teacher paying Social Security tax on every dollar she earns and asks why the $1 million earner stops paying at $184,500. Hern looks at Social Security's financing shortfall and proposes moving the worker's full retirement age from 67 to 69. Neither man created Social Security's financing problem. But where each man looks first for the solution tells voters something important about whom he sees when he thinks about the Oklahoma economy. Priest's starting point looks much more like the economic lives of most working families. People who work for a paycheck, pay Social Security tax throughout the year, and expect the retirement benefits they earn to be there when their working years are over. Hern's path in Washington has led him to a proposal that begins by asking future workers to give Social Security something more: 2 additional years before full retirement benefits. That may be the clearest difference between the 2 men so far. Priest begins with the worker who has less room to give. Hern begins by asking that worker to give more. The phrase "raise the retirement age" sounds considerably more benign than cut Social Security. Economically, however, raising the full retirement age reduces benefits. The Congressional Budget Office examined what happens if the full retirement age rises from 67 to 69. Its conclusion is straightforward. Every affected person receives less in Social Security benefits over his or her lifetime. Someone who delays claiming by the same number of months may preserve the monthly benefit but collects it for fewer months. Someone who claims at the same age as under current law receives a smaller monthly benefit. Either way, lifetime benefits fall. That is the part of the debate hidden by the phrase "work longer." For some people, working longer is entirely realistic. For others, it is not. Retirement is not just an accounting number. It is time, games, graduations, fishing trips, family dinners, and years watching grandchildren grow. Picture 2 67-year-old Oklahoma workers. One works behind a desk, remains healthy, has substantial retirement savings, and can decide whether another 2 years of work makes financial sense. The other has spent 4 decades repairing equipment, working construction, lifting patients in a nursing home, stocking a warehouse, welding, farming, ranching, or standing on concrete 8 hours a day. They are the same chronological age. Their bodies may tell very different stories. A mechanic's back does not care what the national average life expectancy is. Neither do a nurse's knees. A rancher's shoulder does not become younger because Congress changes the full retirement age from 67 to 69. Hern's longevity argument deserves particular scrutiny in Oklahoma. The latest CDC state life tables show Oklahoma life expectancy at birth at 73.8 years. For Oklahoma men, it is 71.3 years. For Oklahoma women, 76.5 years. Nationally, the corresponding numbers are 74.8 for men and 80.2 for women. Oklahoma ranks near the bottom for both sexes. Income makes the problem even more unequal. The Government Accountability Office reviewed research finding that lower-income men approaching retirement live, on average, 3.6 to 12.7 fewer years than higher-income men, depending on the study and how income groups were defined. GAO also concluded that raising the retirement age would proportionally reduce projected lifetime Social Security benefits more for lower-income groups. That matters in Oklahoma. The worker most likely to need Social Security is also more likely to have less savings, fewer alternatives, and fewer healthy years in which to enjoy retirement. A 2-year increase may look equal on paper. The sacrifice is not equal. Hern supporters can reasonably ask whether removing the wage cap is merely a politically attractive fairness argument that raises too little money to matter. The numbers say otherwise. The Social Security Administration's latest published model of eliminating the taxable wage ceiling, while not increasing benefits for those additional taxed earnings, closes about 67% of the long-range shortfall and moves projected reserve depletion from 2034 to 2059 under the 2025 trustees' assumptions. The Peterson Foundation has examined a less aggressive version in which earnings above the cap are taxed and those additional earnings also receive Social Security benefit credit. Even that approach was estimated to raise about $3.4 trillion over 10 years and close about 48% of Social Security's 75-year funding gap. The point is not that one option solves everything. The point is that revenue reform can address a large share of the problem before Congress touches the retirement age. The Peterson Foundation also notes that eliminating the cap is not the only revenue option. For example, an SSA model tax on high-end investment income could close about 38% of the long-term funding gap. Other options include a gradual increase in the payroll tax rate, expanding Social Security coverage to additional state and local government workers, and broadening forms of compensation subject to payroll taxation. These percentages cannot simply be added together because policies interact. But they demonstrate something important. Congress has more than one lever. Raising the retirement age is a choice. It is not an inevitability. This is why the difference between 2034 and 2059 deserves to be near the beginning of the debate rather than buried at the end. Suppose Congress broadened the Social Security wage base and bought roughly another generation before reserve depletion. A lot can happen in 25 years. More people could enter the labor force. Real wages could grow. Congress could make smaller revenue adjustments. Demographics could change. Lawmakers could combine several modest reforms instead of relying on one large benefit reduction. That does not mean Congress should wait until 2058 to act again. It means Washington does not have to start by cutting lifetime benefits. There is another reason this argument is different from most disputes over federal spending. Social Security is not a congressional grant. Workers see the deduction come out of their paychecks year after year. Employees pay. Employers pay. Self-employed Oklahomans generally pay both shares. They work for decades under the expectation that when their working years end, the retirement system they financed will be there. That is why earned benefit is more than political language. A teacher who has spent 40 years contributing to Social Security does not regard retirement benefits as somebody else's charity. Neither does the plumber, the nurse, the farmer, the mechanic, or the small business owner. They understood the bargain: work, contribute, retire, receive the benefit you earned. Congress may have to change the bargain because the numbers no longer work. But when it does, Oklahoma voters deserve to know who Washington asks to sacrifice first. What workers earn is more than a monthly check. It is the time that check makes possible. Imagine two people. One earns $60,000 a year. Every wage dollar is subject to Social Security tax. The other earns $1 million in wages. The Social Security tax stops after the first $184,500. Now the system needs additional money. Hern's approach begins on the benefit side of the equation. Future workers wait longer for full benefits. Priest begins on the contribution side. High earners continue contributing on more of their income. Neither choice is painless. Nobody particularly enjoys paying more. Nobody wants to receive less. But the two approaches ask very different people to absorb the first sacrifice. That is what makes this more than a debate over Social Security accounting. It is a debate over fairness. Oklahoma voters really need to remember only two numbers: $184,500 That is the 2026 wage line where Social Security taxes stop. 69. That is the full retirement line Kevin Hern has supported for future workers. Hern's approach moves the second line. Priest says start with the first. And the Social Security Administration's own modeling shows that changing the income side of the equation is not symbolic. Under its latest published estimate, eliminating the taxable ceiling under one model pushes projected reserve depletion from 2034 to 2059. So before Washington tells an Oklahoma nurse, plumber, mechanic, farmer, rancher, or teacher to work longer for full benefits, there is a fair question to ask. Why shouldn't the person earning $500,000 or $1 million first be asked to continue paying Social Security tax under the same wage income rule that applies to almost every working family? Kevin Hern and Jim Priest see the same Social Security problem. They look to different sides of the table for the solution. Hern would move the retirement line. Priest would move the income line. For Oklahoma families, that may tell us more about the difference between the two men than any campaign slogan ever could. Social Security is about more than solvency. It is about who gets the time they earned. Follow the money at langdon.substack.com.